Welcome back to our session on making the most of OData feeds through Business Central. It is my great pleasure to introduce our presenter for the day, John Smith. John is our Senior Director of SMB. Many of you know John from his time at Corporate Renaissance Group, but John's career spans finance and human resources, including 2 decades of consulting experience. So we are very happy to have John with us today to present the session on OData. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Angela. Appreciate it. And good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for spending some time with us. I hope you're getting lots out of this event that's useful and minimally getting some professional hours that you can claim if you're on the Canadian side doing accounting. The session today is on OData and the agenda. I mean, I think the first bullet's what we'd all need to figure out: what the heck is OData? How does it relate to Business Central? Why would I use it? I'm going to spend a bunch of time showing you stuff in Business Central, Power BI, and Excel so that you get a flavor for it. If you got questions, ask. So with that, let me go ahead and get started here. Whoa, skipped a slide somehow. I'm not sure why that happened. Let's go back here. And there we go. What is OData? So we could make this very scientific or very simple. OData stands for Open Data Protocol. It's a web protocol designed for querying data. You use OData with Business Central to really pull data out of a system for reporting, as well as it's used for updating data. So there is, what you're going to see in Business Central is a little wizard-driven approach that allows us to get to a URL that is used to connect your cloud tenant of Business Central with either Excel or Power BI to draw the data out. So if you want to think about it, what's OData? It's really like a web service for getting data for reporting. Why do we need it? Well, we're in a cloud tenant with Business Central, right? And Business Central does run on a SQL database in the back end, but we don't have access to the SQL database. So in the old world, we would have been able to get somebody to do a query in SQL Management Studio and drop the data out of a table and then manipulate it somehow, or get sophisticated with Integration Manager or some integration suite that we can pull data out of. In the new world, we need a way to do it, and in an advanced modern ERP system, the idea is that a business user should be able to get this data, and that we shouldn't have to rely on our friends in IT or somebody really uber technical to code some SQL query to pull the data out. All that being said, it's a way to get data out of Business Central. And in fact, it's the only way that you can really draw data out of a database other than running the reports that you all have on the front end of the system. So why would I use it? Well, it's used to connect directly to Power BI and Excel using a pivot table, and I'm going to show you both of those options today. So if you're thinking about, or you may already have some in place, but if you're thinking about building out your Power BI library, exposing information in Business Central through Power BI, or you love pivot tables and you love Excel, and there's lots of it that do, this is the connector to Business Central, and it's going to allow you to do that. I will say it's really well thought out, okay? Especially versus our prior generation products in Microsoft. This one's really nice. And one of the reasons why it's nice is that even when you're looking at a table, nothing's awkward. It's not like GL00100 and some column name that you don't know what it means, right? It's not technical syntax, it's business syntax. So it's like, hey, I'm looking at the customer primary record, and I'm looking at address one field and country and postal code or zip code and city or state or province. And it's obvious when you look at the data set what it is that you're going to be pulling out of Business Central. They built into Business Central a wizard that allows us to get this data. And I explain this as a business user function. That bullet is there for a reason, right? It's designed to be done by business users. Now, I'm not saying that, hey, you just launch into Power BI and you don't need a bit of training, because you do need a bit of training, but there's lots of free resources on YouTube on Power BI. And Power BI Desktop is free from Microsoft, right? So some of the stuff I'm going to show you today, you could actually just go try it out, and it's, you know, you're going to get a feeling for it yourself. It's important to understand that in Business Central, there are, I think it's definitely over 250. I can't remember the exact number. There's already pre-established OData feeds for the main data sets in Business Central, but they provide the wizard to allow you to broaden that data set. There's a data feed even for the financial reports that you're creating in Business Central. Okay, so that's enough on what the OData feeds are. Let's actually look at how we would use this. And so let me just go ahead and open up Business Central. So for starters, right, when we look at Power BI, and Microsoft ships some pre-established Power BI reports that work on the sample company data set for Business Central, right? So when I look at something like this, just give us a second to load. If I look at this financial dashboard, right, and if I go look at KPI details, the dashboard drills through to the details, so you can kind of right-click here and say, hey, I want to drill through to KPI details. The bottom line is all of the data that's feeding these reports is coming from an OData feed or a web service, okay? So the OData feed is the connector to Business Central that's allowing Power BI to visualize this data. So if we go back to Business Central and we want to look at what does that actually look like, what does it look like, what does it feel like to deal with the OData feeds, what you're going to do is you're going to go to your search bar and you're going to look for something called web services. And when you go out and you search web services, okay, you're going to come in here and you're going to see this listing. And this listing is telling you all of the data sets that Microsoft has already made available through the system for use with Power BI or Excel. So if I just navigate here and you can basically see that pretty much everything has already been set up, from vendor cards to workflows to customer ledger entries to the GL entries to GL budget entries, right? If I keep going and just go right to the top, you know, you're going to see things like jobs, you're going to see a balance sheet, more entries, timesheet posting entries, sales orders, items, and it's everywhere in here. So one of the best ways to figure out when you're looking at the existing web services, is there already one here or do I need to create a new one? One of the best ways to do it is just to come to search and type in what you're looking for, right? So like I might want to see, what do we have on customer? And so this tells me right now, without changing anything, these are the data sets that they've made available for customer, okay? And I'm going to show you in a second how you can see what data is in there. But you can, like, the first thing I just want to point out is, like, we can understand by looking at this what it is, right? We know what the customer card is. We know what the customer's bank account card is, right? We know what customer posting groups are. We know what item sales by customer are. Like, we can pretty much figure out, okay, that's information on what customer bought what item. There's some special ones like the Power BI customer list. You'll see that in there. That's Microsoft's sample Power BI report connected to the Power BI customer list. So, you know, just like when I showed you earlier when I logged in and looked at the financial dashboard, you know, they've set up some web services just for those Power BI reports that ship with it. Top customer overview. Okay, so we get a big list here. And again, if you know, we come in and do this a lot. If I'm using the jobs module, I can come and look for things that contain the word jobs, and it's going to show me that. So this is the first important thing to note, is that we've got a pre-established list of what these data sets are. Now, the next thing would be that you sort of look at this and you say, well, what if I want to create one myself? Or what if I've scanned up and down this list and I just can't see what I'm looking for, right? So in that case, what you can do is you can go over here to actions and you can go to new document and you've got this thing here that says create data set. Just go ahead and click on it. This is the wizard I was telling you about at the beginning, okay? And honestly, it's very simple to use. You shouldn't be worried about doing anything wrong here, because the structure of what's in Business Central and the way Microsoft has designed this, they've designed it in such a way that, if we're trying it out, we can't screw it up. Now, like always, I would recommend that you do this from your test company, just in case you're drawing data out and it causes some performance hiccup or something in production. It shouldn't, but as anything, when you're testing it, do it from your test company. So anyways, what does this say? Well, let's just read about what the wizard says. First of all, they call it a reporting data setup. You can create data sets you can use for building reports in Excel and Power BI with an OData source. Hence the name of this session. For tools such as Power BI, you can select columns and deselect columns and set some filters in here. Well, that sounds interesting. Next, what do I want to do, right? And this is kind of neat as well. I can create a new data set. I can create a copy of one that's existing, and I might do that if I wanted to modify it, or I can edit an existing data set. For now, let's just create a new data set. Why not? So next thing is you got to give it a name, right? You saw all the names before. You saw the 250 names. It needs some sort of name. So I'm going to name this one Connections John. And now it asks me, where do you want to look for the data in Business Central? Do I want to look at a specific page or a pre-existing database query? Make things simple. I'm going to start with page. Then it asks me which one. So I'm going to click on this ellipse and it's going to open up. Let me expand the screen. It's going to open up all the pages in Business Central that hold information. So again, as you look at this, right, look at all the things we have here: salespeople, GL lists. There's the general ledger entries table. Okay. Customer lookups, vendors, items, purchase orders, sales orders. You can keep scrolling through. This is a long, long list. So again, I would come back here and I would say, let's use the search, because there's hundreds of pages here. And I'm just gonna filter now on customer. And you can see now it's a bigger list than what we looked at before. And this is the point. Like, Microsoft hasn't mapped every single customer data set into web services. They've already done the ones that are the main ones, but they know you might need something special. So when you actually come to this stage, you're actually looking at all of the tables here in Business Central. And you can see right away, you're not looking at any weird technical terminology. Like, you're sitting here looking at, hey, here's the customer list, right? So maybe what I want to do is, let me just keep scrolling through here. Yeah, customer list for collections. Let's make it easy. For this example, I'm going to look at customer ledger entries, right? This is where all our customer information goes after we post, say, an invoice or a credit note. So I say, okay. So all it does now is it says, okay, well, we're going to build this Connections John based on the customer ledger entries table. So I click next. Now this is kind of nice, right? Here's what I'm looking at. This is the contents of the table, right? Here's all the columns that are available in it. And I can simply say, I want to include these or exclude them just by clicking on these check boxes. So maybe, I don't know, I'll put global 1 and 2 in there. I don't care about the customer posting group. We're not using intercompany. Salesperson, okay. Currency's not relevant. I'll have the original. I just want the amount, right? And the remaining amount is kind of good to have. And sales for the last, sales in local currency is good. And then there's all this discount stuff down here. And I'm like, I don't want that in my query. So I'm just taking this stuff off and just scrolling through and removing things I don't want to have, because I don't want to. This is also about shaping the data we're pulling out of the tenant, right? I want to shape it in a way that I want to pull the data out that I need, because once I've established this connector, I might have multiple reports running off of it. So, you know, every time I run a query and every time I say refresh the report, it goes and pulls the database. I don't need it to pull back every column in the table if that's not what I'm using in the report. And remember, this isn't a one-time deal, because if I don't select something here and I figure out once I start building the report, gee, I forgot to add, you know, I needed that column, then I come back to the wizard and I say I want to create a new data set, and then I choose the option I want to edit an existing data set. And I call up this one and I come back to this stage and I click the check marks to include the stuff I forgot to include. So it's not like you're one and done. The other thing you could do is you could create connections John, connection Angela, connections Carla, and connection Jacob, and they all point to the same table. So you could have multiple web services pointing to the same table. Again, I wouldn't recommend that, but you know, you're just going to get this proliferation of web services, and you're going to be looking at them going, I don't remember what they're all for. But that's all there is to the wizard. So what you do is you say publish. And what it does is it publishes your OData URL, okay? And this is the whole point of this. When you open up Power BI or when you open up Excel, and you can connect to data, and one of the data sources it'll give you is an OData feed. And you copy and paste the URL in and click connect. And then the data is going to basically come into Power BI, and it's going to come into Excel. So really well thought out. Now, before we go in and show you that, a couple other little things I want to add to this that are important, okay? One of the things is that you might find that when you look at the list of items that you have here, and you've looked at the tables and you just can't figure something out, or you've got the right table, but there's some fields from another table that are missing. Okay, what's the strategy then? Well, you could actually have, and you'll see in a second in Power BI, you could pull in 2 web services or 3 web services into your report. You can pull multiple OData feeds to create your report. That's the first option. That's the kind of out of the box option. The other thing to point out is that one of the things we do as a firm, right, is we do a lot of these custom filter list views. We call them smart lists. So like this little piece here that I'm showing you is one of our applications that we have, right? And you know, one of the things we do a lot of distribution and sales type implementations, and we're always looking for like, what's the line level document? Right? I want to see sales lines. So when I click on this guy, I'll just show you quickly. It's bringing me to this filter list view, right? And the filter list view is called sales line list, and it's got, you know, it's got all kinds of stuff in here. Well, the reality is we created this, right? One of our developers did. And, you know, it's not a huge exercise to go create these things as custom views. But the good thing is when he creates it, it actually becomes a data source for OData feeds. So, you know, I've got this listed here, sales line view. And I think if I go to personalize, my guess is there's probably a whole mountain of other fields, or they're already all mapped in. Yeah, we got all the kinds of other fields in here, as you can see, right? Like there's huge amounts. So, all right, so let's just go back to web services for a second. I just want to show you this. I'm not going to create the whole web service, but I'll just show you the what the context is. So when I go to the web services, I'm just going to go back to a new document, create a new data set, and yeah, it's a new one we're going to do. We'll do this again. We'll call this one connections sample, and I'm not going to have a space in there. Connections sales line, I'll call it that. And I'm going to go here. This time when I go up and find it, I'm going to search. What I'm going to search now under our legacy company name, we created the smart listing. Well, the first one you're looking at there, CRG_sales list, is the filter list view I just showed you, right? So I'm going to choose that. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to say next. And here is the smorgasbord of data that we have created. So think of this as like, we've created a custom filter list view because we wanted a whole bunch more information. We wanted to combine a bunch of tables into one view. But now I can use that one view to create a data source to connect to Power BI and Excel. So kind of something that's cool to think about. I'll go ahead and click publish and say finish. All right, so good, John, you showed us that much. What's next? Well, let's go take a look at Power BI for a second. And what we'll do is, let me get that up for us. Yeah. Sorry, just give me 2 seconds. Okay. Oh, sorry, wrong one. I think I opened the wrong one. I apologize. Give me 2 more seconds, guys. Okay, Power BI desktop. And let's move to the cell. Close that. All right, so let's close that guy out here. Got too many things open in my background, and it's preventing me from opening up desktop. Okay. It always works this way when you're on a demo and you want something to open, and it doesn't. All right, we'll open Power BI desktop here. We'll just give it a second to go ahead and open up, and it's asking for an update. For some reason, I had it open earlier, of course, because when you come into a demonstration, the last thing you want to do is hold everybody up waiting for something to load. But we'll go ahead and we'll open it up. So when I open up Power BI, right, the first thing that's important to establish is that we have to connect to data. And so in Power BI, we have this get data feature. And you'll notice right away in the list is an OData feed. So what I could do, right, is come and paste that URL from Business Central right in here to open the data set. Now, Power BI has another feature that I actually prefer to get the data other than copying and pasting URLs. Okay, you can do that. It'll work. If you go in here and you say more, when you go get data and you say more, what you can do is you go to online services. And in online services, you'll actually see a pre-established Business Central connector. So it says Dynamics 365 Business Central, and I'm going to go ahead and try and connect to that. And you'll see what it's doing. It's saying, hey, you should be able to connect, and for some reason there's an error there. All right, must be because I have the wrong version of Power BI open, and it'll go connect to the data. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to try this one more time. And probably what I have to do, my guess is close this out and reopen it, and we'll try that again. So give me just 2 seconds, guys. Okay, I'm going to do something in another window, and I'm going to open that while I'm going to show you the Excel connector, and we're going to come back to Power BI because that's causing me an issue for some reason here on GoToMeeting. I don't know why that is. Okay, same thing with Excel. So in Excel now, you've got data, and when you say, hey, I want to go get data, you've got from other sources, and you'll see in here that you've got from an OData feed as well. Okay, so one more thing that I'm going to show you while we're connecting here is that back in Business Central, there's one other web service that's important to point out. This next web service relates to your financial reports. So you all know you have financial statements here, right? Income statement, balance sheet, etc. And what Business Central has is a financial report KPI web service. And so what happens with this web service is that it actually allows us to bring into Power BI all of our financial statements. And so when I go to our web services here and look at our existing web services that we have, and I'm just going to type in Power BI, you're going to see I have already established a Power BI financial report KPI web service. So I am actually going to take that URL in this case, and I'm going to go back to Excel. And in Excel, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and say I want a data. I'm going to go get data, and I'm going to go to get data from other sources, from an OData feed. And as we go and get that data from an OData feed, we're going to say okay. And it'll take a second or two. But what it's doing now is it's gone and pulled all the data from that web service. And it gives me a preview of the data that's in it, right? This is the data from Business Central. And what I can do here is I can say, I'm going to go ahead and load this. I can load it straight as an Excel table, but I'm going to prefer to load it to a pivot table. And so with this pivot table, I've just created the data in a pivot table in Excel. So we're looking at this pivot table in Excel. Takes a second or two to open up. But what's happened here? It's pulled in for us all of the data that's been configured for that web service. And in this case, what it's doing, that web service has been configured to pull financial statements. And so what I'm going to do is simply create a view of the data. I'm going to say, I want to have the account schedule name. I'm going to move that up as a filter. I want to have the balance. I'm going to have, well, let's see here. I want to have the balance at date actual, the balance at date for last year. And I'm going to use this KPI code and KPI name here. Now, in here, I'm going to quickly do some things. I'm going to turn off the subtotal. And oops, I go back and do that again. Turned off the subtotal. I'm going to go over to design. I'm just going to change the layout to tabular so this makes more sense for us. I thought I turned off the subtotal. I didn't. There, the subtotal's off. Okay. Let's go in here, go back to the home page. We'll get rid of these decimals. Up here, I've got my statements that I included in the web service. So I'm going to say, I want to look at the income statement. And when you look at this, right, it's giving me an income statement. This is like current balance. So I'll just relabel this balance. And this one was last year. So I'll rename that last year. Now, what's the point of this web service? Well, it's actually doing some things for us. When I created back in Business Central, when I created statements back here, our statements had in them, let's just look at one for a second to illustrate this. They have a format to them, right? This is something where we've said, hey, you know, when I do a statement, I want to have totals in it. I want to have, you know, these accounts roll up into those groupings. I want to have net income and things like that. When you're looking at the financial statement web service, what you get is you get those totals already programmed into it. So you can see here, I've got total revenue right down here somewhere. I've probably got total expenses and I got net income already calculated. I don't need to go learn how to create calculations in Power BI to do this. I'll turn the totals off. So, you know, I've actually got that here. And if I don't want to see these codes, I can just go like this and just say hi. I use the code just because it's a great sorting mechanism. You can do all your Excel formatting in here and create your, you know, your P&L in Excel essentially. So now this is live, right? So then I say, okay, well, I kind of like this. Maybe I want to just copy this over here and do a different view of it. In fact, let me go back here for a second and just unhide that. And can I unhide that? Unhide. John, unhide. Where's unhide gone? Okay. Unhide. There we go. Okay, so I needed that. I'm going to copy that over. And let me just copy this again because now I have a second schedule. But in this one, I want to use the summary. So I had created in Business Central a summary income statement. So now what I'm just going to do this. The reason I have this one sitting here, I'm going to go ahead and hide that again. And I'm going to go back here and hide this because I now don't need to see those codes. Is now I'm going to take this one and I'm going to say, hey, maybe I want to do a chart or graph, right? So I'll go to my inserts and I'll do recommended charts. And I'm going to say, okay, so now I've got in here a chart and graph built in Excel. So the final step is just when you click on pivot tables and you come over to data, just always have this refresh data when opening the file. You have that clicked on, right? And you know, hey, it's going to refresh every time it opens this report. It's going to look to Business Central and say, is there more data for me? So it's structured. I would clean it up and format it and make it look nice. But it's actually now like a living dashboard inside Excel. And that's kind of a fun, interesting thing to look at, right? So it makes it a little interesting when you can think about building something in Excel that is, you know, something that's repeatable, that you can use again and again and again, and you know, you can have data sitting there and use that for it. So I'm going to go back and just do one more thing here while we're thinking about this. And we're going to try and connect this one more time. And I think it's because I have an update owing in this one. And I apologize, guys. I have this whole thing open, as you can expect, before I came in to this session today. And as always, it never fails that when you do that, you have trouble when you're trying to get into a session and you're trying to present. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to see if I can connect again. And if, you know what, I'm going to sign out and sign back in. That may be what is required. Okay, apologies. I'll do this very quick. Use my old logins where we're connected to our Business Central tenant, just as well that you guys can see this, because we have to be able to connect into our tenant, and that's how we connect. One of the advantages of being on the Microsoft platform is that you have one login to get you into everything, and this is the login that we're going to show that connects all of us. So our Business Central login, our Power BI login, all of these logins should be the same. And hopefully now when I go to get data and go to more, it's going to let me in because it's refreshed that connection. So we'll go back to online services and we will go to Business Central and connect here. And fingers crossed it's establishing a connection, and it's not. All right, well, I will have to keep trying something different. The bottom line is you're going to be able to connect into Power BI. And the Power BI connection is going to allow you to create the reports that we looked at with right at the beginning when we were in Business Central. So if you want to end up in the visualization world with these types of reports and these ones, it's all about connecting the OData feed and the web service to Business Central. And that's really what it does. At this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if there are any questions out there, because I want to give this one more shot in Power BI, but I don't want you guys all to have to watch it. So let me just see if we have any questions right now while I'm trying to connect back to Power BI desktop.
Hi, John. We do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So the question from Jensen is it the web service stored internally within Business Central, or is it published somewhere? I'm trying to ask whether it can be published to a Power BI workspace so it can be refreshed on a regular basis, or will it always be live?
The web service is stored in Business Central and it is always live, okay? So you just connect to that URL or that web service one time, and once you've connected to it once, right, then it's live. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to maintain it. It will work for you, and it's just there, and you continue to use it. It's stored on the web service page in Business Central, and unless somebody edits it or changes it or deletes it, it will always be there. It's just a connector. Think of it as just a connector agent between Power BI and Business Central.
Thank you very much, John. That's it for questions right now.
Okay, let me see if I just think I've got this back up, and I apologize, guys. I think I had the wrong version of. I have two versions running here, and I had the old one. So let me just do this one more try. And if this doesn't work, I will add a little more context. So yeah, so when you're in Power BI, what we're going to do is we're going to get data. We're going to go to online services. You've seen this now a number of times. This was the more modern one, I can tell. I'm going to connect to Business Central, and it's going to go ahead and connect. And when it goes ahead and connects, it's going to serve us up with some data. And this is what you should see. So apologies, this is what was supposed to happen the first time. When we go in and look at this, right, here's all my different tenants. And so in production, I'm working in a database called John STC. I think that's what it's called. And so this online connector, one of the values of it right away is that it's basically cataloging all of our OData feeds against the company you're working in. So you can see here, here's a listing of all those web services, right? Including all the ones that are pre-established from Microsoft. They're all sitting here. They're under standard, advanced, and APIs. Now, what I can do, because I've named a few of these, I can just go search out the ones I'm looking for. And I have created, you can see these ones I created earlier in the presentation, Connections John and Connections Sales Line. In fact, what I want to do right now is I want to build a little Power BI report based on two other connectors I already built. I call them Connections 2023-1 and 2023-2. So I'm just going to connect those and I'm going to say, go ahead and load those. Okay. So what Power BI is doing right now is it's reading out to those web services. It's going and polling Business Central, and it's going to bring back these data sets. And again, those data sets you could go look at under the web services page in Business Central. So we'll give it a second or two. I'm actually doing this specifically because I'm showing you two data sets. We did the other one in Excel with the URL. It was just one data set. And when you're using Excel, you can open one OData feed and then go back to data and say, I want to load another one, and then use the modeler or connector layer in Excel, Power Pivot, to connect those two tables together. I don't want to get overly complicated here though. So I want to show you something. This is, again, I want to speak to like the average business user. So what happened? It loaded the data, and the data's all over here under the data pane, right? We got Connections 2023-01 and Connections 2023-02. And in fact, if I go over to just my data view here, what I can see is I can actually look at this data in a tabular format to understand what it is. And what this was what we're looking at here, this is sales line by customer. Okay, and I'm looking at the data set, and there's a problem. It's got almost all the data I need in it, but there's a problem that it has the sell to customer, but it doesn't have the name. So what I did then is I created a second web service. This second web service pulls the customer name. And you notice here, this web service, Connections 2023-2, has the number in the name. 2023-1 has the sell to customer number. Okay, so what would happen here? I got two data sets, they're sitting here. Let's not connect them for a second, let's just show something. Let's say I want to create a view in Power BI. So what I will do is say, I want the amount and I want it by the sell to customer, right? And, you know, I'm going to put that in table format. So right there, I got the sell to customer and I've got the sum of the amount. That's nice, but it's relatively useless because I don't have the customer name. And if I wanted the customer name, I mean, I could come down here and find the name, right? And I could say, okay, well, I've got a name there and I want to add the name, but what's that going to do? It can't display it because it's not connected. So I'm going to come back to our manage relationships here. I'm just going to expand this window and I'm going to expand this one, right? And over here, I have sell to customer number. And over here, I have number and name. So I just need to find a way to make a relationship between these two tables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the sell to customer, it's going to drag it over top of where it says number there, right? And all that's done is it's connected the two tables based on the customer number. Very simple. Now I'm going to go back to Power BI, and in Power BI, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add in the name. Well, now I've got the name. That's fantastic, right? I've got the name, I've got the number, I got the sell to customer number. In fact, I don't really want the sell to customer number anymore. I just want the name and the sum of the amount. I'm like, well, this is looking pretty good, right? Well, there's actually some advantages of having the other data set here too, because I've got a country region. You know, if I wanted to add that in, I could add the country region in as well, right? And I'll just keep expanding this. I'm like, hey, this is pretty good. I'm starting to create a data set that combined two of these things. Now, when I actually looked at that amount though earlier, when I was looking at the data table that's here, I was scrolling across and I noticed that amount, it's in here somewhere, amount appears to be the quantity times the unit cost. And I really need the price and what we sold it for as well as the cost amount. So if I go back to Power BI, one of the things I can do really easily is I can create something called a quick measure. And in the quick measure, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say, hey, I want to have a multiplication. And in the multiplication, I want to take some information that I already have and create a new measure. So I'm going to take quantity and I'm going to multiply that by unit price, okay? And I'm just going to say add it. So it's going to go ahead and add right in here quantity times unit price. And it shows me up here, that's the formula it's going to use for it. So I'm good with that. I'm just going to, quantity times unit price is not a great name. So I'm just going to right click and rename that and just call it revenue for now. I guess I should have called it sales, but for the sake of today, it's fine. And now I'm going to put revenue into the mix. So let me go ahead and just click back here in this pane, and we'll click and put revenue in there. So
John,
now we
just
actually
a quick time check to let you know that we have about 5 minutes left.
Okay, thanks, Angela. That's good. So now we actually have revenue, and we have, we have the name, the customer region, we have revenue, and we have cost, which is great, right? So, I mean, you guys can now understand that you can take these visualizations, you can copy them, you can just paste them back in Power BI again, and you can start creating your dashboards and views, or you can completely change them. And you're going to get a great ability to look at this data. Maybe I want to have a bar chart or something instead of now, just to go alongside my table. And that's connecting two data sets together and doing a view in Power BI. So basically, OData is the main way to get data out of Business Central to connect to these tools. I encourage you to try it. I apologize for the Power BI loading issues today. That took us a little off script. But whether you use the OData feeds to create Power BI, as I've done here, or whether you want to create just simple Excel, the great thing is that you can try it today because you have Business Central. Because you probably already have Excel. I'm going to assume everybody has Excel on their desktop. And Power BI Desktop, where we just created these views, is a freebie from Microsoft. So you can just go ahead and just try this, right? Just try it out. It really is the next generation of what Microsoft is offering. And it's a really, really important part of the reporting strategy in Business Central. One more thing I'll just mention quickly before I turn this back to Angela is that we have a partner named BI for Dynamics. And we'd be happy to talk to you guys about BI for Dynamics. What they do is they provide a data warehouse that's already mapped all the Business Central data. Interestingly, the only way they can populate their data warehouse is to pull the OData feeds to load their data warehouse. But it does give you the opportunity, if you're thinking bigger about BI, to connect other systems with Business Central. And they have about 250 really well thought out Power BI reports built on Business Central. So if you're ready to jump into the deep end and you're concerned about, there's a lot of learning, I got a lot to do, this is gonna be a big project, I don't want this monster project, I want to make it a big project to do this, I just want it up and running quick. BI for Dynamics is an important part of that. And we'd be happy to talk to you about that, and obviously give you any feedback that you might require, get you a demo. Angela, I'll pass it back to you.
Great, thank you very much, John. Thank you for that excellent presentation and explaining OData feeds and how powerful they are within Business Central. Again, thank you very much for attending this session, and thank you very much to you, John.
Thanks, guys. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, bye.